Hello and welcome to In Conversation with Halle Berry at the 45th Toronto International Film Festival. I'm Joanna Vicente, and I'm the Executive Director and co-head of TIFF.
And I'm Cameron Bailey. I'm the Artistic Director and co-head of TIFF. We want to thank, as we begin, our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oréal Paris, and Visa, their continued support, as well as our major supporters, the Government of Ontario, Telefilm Canada, and the City of Toronto for all the support they offer to us. You know, to elevate women in the film industry, we launched Share Her Journey, which is an initiative that supports women behind and in front of the camera with a focus on mentorship, skills development, and other opportunities for emerging women filmmakers and creators. 2020 was poised to be a great year for women filmmakers with so many films set to be released, but when theaters around the world closed their doors, those premieres were delayed and we began to lose momentum.
That is why we couldn't be more proud that women are so well represented in our 2020 festival. Of all the titles in this year's TIFF lineup, 45% are directed, co-directed, or created by women, including one by tonight's special guest and 6 young filmmakers who have participated in TIFF talent development programs. All Rising Stars participants are women, and 15 female filmmakers are taking part in this year's festival through talent development programs. In partnership with L'Oréal Paris and MGM, we are honored to award Tracy Deer at the annual TIFF Tribute Awards, which will be broadcast on CTV and Variety.com. We hope you'll be able to join us on Tuesday, September 15 at 8 p.m. to watch Tracy receive the TIFF Emerging Talent Award. Share Her Journey doesn't just live at each year's festival. It is present in our year-round offerings. You can join the movement and stay informed with what we're doing at shareherjourney.org.
And while this year's festival might be smaller, the role that women play and the impact that they have on the world of film is bigger than it's ever been. And as part of this year's festival and our commitment to Share Her Journey, we're thrilled to spotlight tonight an incredible woman, Halle Berry.
To moderate this conversation, we are glad to have Amanda Paris with us. Amanda is the author of a weekly column for CBC Arts and the host of CBC Arts, Exhibitionists, The Filmmakers from the Vaults, and Marvin's Room. She also writes stories for the stage and screen. She has worked as an educator, researcher, and an actor and community organizer. She has hosted many events for us in the past. So you are in good hands. Over to you, Amanda.
Hi, thank you so much, Joanne and Cameron. It is so exciting to be here and so exciting to be here with Halle. Before I introduce her, a bit about the format for this event. Halle and I are going to talk for about 35 minutes and we'll show some clips from her work. And then towards the end of the conversation, we're going to open it up to questions from you, our audience. We can't see you, but we'll be able to see your questions. You'll be able to submit them via the chat function that will appear at the bottom left corner when we are ready to take your questions. So over to our special guest. Halle Berry is an icon. That is not a debatable statement. That is a fact. For more than 3 decades, she has broken down barriers and built an impressive filmography both in front of and behind the camera. Her breakout role came in Spike Lee's Jungle Fever before she joined the cast of the beloved X-Men franchise as Storm. In 2001, she delivered her Oscar-winning performance in Monsters Ball and has since starred in numerous blockbusters, such as the X-Men sequels, a James Bond franchise hit, and the action epic John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum. This year, she returns to TIFF for her very exciting directorial debut film, Bruised, in which she also stars and which will premiere tomorrow evening. I hope you have your tickets. The highly anticipated drama is set in the world of MMA fighting, and I look forward to talking to Halle about her career and especially her directorial debut. Please join me in welcoming the one and only Halle Berry. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Amanda. I am so thrilled to be here and to speak with you. Thank you for having me.
I have many questions. I promise not to ask the ones that so many people asked me to ask, which were many marriage proposals that I got over social media. I will leave those alone and not bother you with them. Today is a super exciting day, and we're going to talk about why today is super exciting a little bit later on. I want us to start with a little bit at the beginning of your journey. Maybe not birth, but close to the beginning. So in 1986, you were the first African-American entrant in the Miss World competition, and then you decided to move into acting. What were you looking for in the acting world that you couldn't find in modeling?
I think I was looking for a voice. I was looking to find an outlet where I could express what I had to say, explore what I had to say. Initially, it truly wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a journalist. That's what I thought I would do. And I thought I would travel the world and, report on world news. That's what I thought I would do. So acting sort of happened as, I like to say many things in my life. I sort of let the universe sort of set forth sometimes what I should be doing. And it happened with my directorial debut, and it happened when I started. I sort of, take the cues around me, and I don't always follow the path that I had set for myself, but I follow the path that is sometimes set before me. Mm-hmm. And that has served me really well in my life.
And it's interesting because you said you wanted to go around the world and tell stories, and kind of did that in a very different way, right?
Different way, right. I took another path.
Yeah, the purpose was served, but just a different strategy. So last night I went on Google and I stumbled on I think it was the first episode of Living Dolls, which I found on YouTube, where you played a teen model. It was one of your breakthrough television roles. But your breakthrough film role was playing a woman with a drug addiction in Spike Lee's Jungle Fever. These are two roles that could not be farther apart. Can you break down what happened between that first TV gig where you played the teen model and that first feature film role where you played a woman grappling with addiction? How did those early acting experiences, how did you get to that place?
Well, the first television role, my first real acting gig, was very close to where I was at that time. I was modeling at that time. It wasn't a big stretch for me. I always felt like I was a token on that show. I never really had much to do. I didn't have a real character or a part to play. So while I was grateful for that opportunity, the creator in me, the creative side of me felt, I felt like I was missing something, Yeah. So I knew early on that in order to be taken seriously as an actor, I would have to shed this physical self and sort of put on display my acting skill and the things that I'd been working on and the things that I knew lived inside of me and the contribution that I knew I could make. So when the film opportunity came along with Spike in Jungle Fever, initially they wanted me to read for the part of his beautiful wife, which of course I was honored to do and honored to go meet Spike. But when I read the script, I immediately thought to myself, this is a great part, but I really want to be Viv the crack hoe. That sounds like the part that I can sink my teeth into. I can start to shed this physical self that had sort of been defining me at that time, and to show a different side of who I was. And luckily for me, Spike will forever be my special person, because Spike gave me a chance to do that. And I can't say he saw it right away, but eventually he was able to see that I could play that other kind of character and I could actually bring some life. And he also realized that, what does one look like who's affected by crack? It doesn't discriminate, crack affects whoever it's going to affect. So it was a good opportunity to sort of bring light to that as well.
I rewatched that film as well in preparation for this interview earlier this week, and I was reminded that you cuss a lot in that movie. Like, wow. And that could be in the resume. Halle Berry, good at cussing. Like, there's like a string of
Oh God, yeah. Sam and I, we used to go at it. That we practiced that actually.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he's continued to use that skill set in his career, but I haven't seen you have to use it as much as him necessarily.
You should be in my house.
Well, this is a good lead into our first clip of the evening from your role in Jungle Fever. In this scene, you play Vivian, a woman with a drug addiction who propositions Wesley Snipes as he walks with his daughter down the street. And so for those watching, I want to flag, as you may be well aware, the scene does contain crude language and content. So let's check out the scene. What a scene, what a scene. So let's talk a little bit about the strategy that you decided to take, the strategy of going against the quote unquote pretty face type, and how did that shift the way that you are perceived, one, in the industry, but also how did it shift the way that you understood your own talent and your own potential?
Well, I have always known that I'm more than the shell that I walk around in. I had a lot of, you know, not unlike most young girls, but I had hardship growing up, and I grew up in an environment where I didn't always feel like I fit in. So I knew that I was full of substance and full of stories to tell. And I knew that I had to somehow find a way to sort of get other people outside of seeing me only via this shell that I'm walking around in. So that day, my film debut in Spike's movie, playing that character, really set my career off in a good direction. Not to say that I didn't play roles that played into my physical self after that, but I felt from that moment on that I could be seen as more than just a pretty face or more than a model turned actor. I felt like I showed something different about myself and about my artistry and my talent that people took notice of.
It opened up options as opposed to being typecast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at your filmography, and you know, those are the ones that we named in your bio pack at the beginning. But there are so many other films that you did. The 90s kind of considered a golden age for Black film, and you were in so many of the iconic movies of that time, from comedies like Baps, Boomerang, to biopics like Why Do Fools Fall in Love and introducing Dorothy Dandridge. I wanted to ask what it felt like to be a part of that moment. Did it feel like the doors were finally opening for Black actors and creators? Because as we look back, we realized that it was a moment that also ended. And we're kind of getting back to it now, but it was a moment.
Yeah, I remember having the feeling when we shot Boomerang that we were slightly before our time. You know, I don't think at that time the industry was really ready for a movie like that, and to see Black people in that way. I think now you look back at it and you think, oh, of course, but we were slightly ahead of our time. And I knew that we were a part of pushing the envelope forward, that we were a part of, you know, making a way out of no way, or finding a new way to tell our stories and to represent ourselves. And it did feel really powerful at that time. And I knew that it would matter more one day than it did that day, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
To pass.
That's such an interesting self-knowledge to have, to know that you're a little bit ahead of your time as you are making something. Because I did read some of the critical reviews from that period of Boomerang, and some of them were like, this seems so unrealistic. And I was like, what part? The Black excellence part?
Yeah. Yeah. Unrealistic to who? Yeah. You know, if you're Black and you know your culture, you know it's true, but society hadn't caught up with that truth yet, right? So it seemed on many levels untrue, when it actually really wasn't.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm guessing you probably know this, you're on social media, but Baps is kind of has a cult following. Like those memes and those iconic outfits show up all the time on my feed, you know, and I don't think it was appreciated necessarily by those that write the reviews at the time, but there is a whole audience that grew up with that movie, that look to it, love it, utilize it, go back to it as a comfort zone, as feel good, you know, comedy.
Yeah. Again, I think these kinds of movies, you know, to the general public, like you said, people who might be reviewing them, they didn't understand the culture enough to know how relevant those movies were. And now they do. And that's why to this day, people come up to me all the time and I know what they're going to say when they say, you know, what my favorite movie is. I almost always know that it's going to be Baps. Almost always. Almost always.
I love that. I love that you're like, of all the movies, the one with me in yellow spandex, like, and doing these dances.
I know why. I really understand. I understand the feel-good nature of that kind of filmmaking and that kind of film. So yeah. I get it.
Well, let's shift over to the moment where the industry was paying attention and you got all of the critical acclaim. Let's talk about Monsters Ball. In Monsters Ball, you play Letitia, a mother and waitress consumed by grief. Again, I rewatched this film in preparation for our conversation. and realized that I had forgotten about the degrees of tragedy that these characters endure. Can you talk about what attracted you to this role and this really challenging story?
You know, I'm always most drawn to characters that are fractured and broken, who are fighting to survive, sort of the underdog or the misunderstood character, the dark horse character in the race. I'm always drawn to that, and I think it's probably speaks to, in many ways, some of my own brokenness and my own life experience. I think every time I get to act in those kinds of roles, I get to have a cathartic experience, and I get to have some healing from my own self, and I get to share parts of myself that, you know, are hidden, that maybe aren't always, I don't always present them so forwardly. So it's a great chance for me to dive in there and do some work, and I'm always attracted. And so when Letitia Musgrove came along, right away, I read, you know, characters like this, and I go, yes, me please. I know exactly where the pain and the torture of this character lives. It's just something I innately know. And I fought really hard for that movie because, again, someone said, I think Lee Daniels at the time, who I love dearly, said, no, she can't play that. You know, no, she doesn't look like the character. Like, he really didn't get it. But to my credit, Mark Forster, our director, really fought hard for me and believed, again, like Spike, that what does one look like who is in this position, who's suffering, you know, who's been marginalized in this way? What do they look like, really? So I'm really fortunate that I got a chance to sort of bring that character to life.
Yeah. And you're right, like this character, you know, watching the film, I'm not distracted in any way, shape, or form of thinking there's an unbelievability about her looking like you, because you were her. You channeled her from inside, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's take a look at a scene from that film. In this scene, Letitia and her son say goodbye to her husband before his execution, played by Sean Diddy Combs. Let's take a look. What does it feel like rewatching that scene now? Are you somebody who rewatches movies that you've been in, or do you ever go back and return to them? No?
Never.
Okay.
I watched them. So that was sort of a moment. I watched them only one time before the press junket, because we have to talk about it, so we have to know what's in the movie. And then I watched it at the premiere, and then never again.
So what was it like? What was it like rewatching that scene in this moment right now?
It was a moment. It's been many 20 years. I haven't seen that scene. So I thought, wow, I was a baby. Oh, I was a baby 20 years ago. Yeah, I never go back and watch them. That's the hardest thing to do, and I had to discover how actually hard that is with my directorial debut. I've had to watch myself over and over and over. That's been one of the hardest aspects of this for me, actually.
Yeah, as you said that you don't watch it, I'm like, but now you had to sit in an editing suite and go through every single scene and cut and like look and every take. So yeah, we'll get to Bruised. But let's talk a little bit about Monsters Ball. It was a huge success, obviously, critically acclaimed when it came out. But in the years since, there's been a lot more education and awareness building around the idea of what types of Black stories and characters get considered during award season, around the idea of the white savior narrative, the danger of the white redemption story at the expense of Black pain and trauma. In the past, you've defended the story and Letitia's agency in the film, but in 2020, do you think your perspective has shifted at all in terms of it?
No, I don't think so. I think I stand behind everything I ever said about it. I felt that was a very important story to tell. I thought it was a character that I very much related to. And I never looked at Billy Bob, honestly, in that story as the white savior. I looked at it as these two characters needing love like they needed the air to breathe. And being a product of a Black father and a white mother, having, living in a world of both, I really understand what it's like just to love for love's sake. And in that movie, those two characters just needed to be loved. And where that love came from, I think, was obsolete. It was more about getting what they needed as human beings. And I still stand behind that today. And that's always how I saw those two characters. It wasn't about Black and white. It was about love and need.
That description that you just gave of the need, I feel like I understand that now more watching it today than I did when I initially watched it, because I was also kind of a baby when I watched it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that hunger for love and for a place of comfort and a place to just
Yeah.
be, I could
And
feel that coming through.
Yeah, and we don't always know where we will find that, you know, and I've always been an advocate for not putting limits or boundaries around where and how you find love. Love is love, and we can't always dictate where we find that or where that comes from. But one thing I know for sure is we all have the need, and we all search love out. It's part of being human. It's part of, you know, what makes us feel alive and helps us to grow and evolve.
Definitely. So I have a bit of a confession to make. This role garnered you an Academy Award, and I think I've watched your speech at least 4 times a year. I cry every single time that I watch it. I remember the first time, I remember watching it live, and it felt like it was just so monumental, so transformative, so groundbreaking. And although that's true on paper, you've talked a lot about the fact that it maybe wasn't necessarily the case in reality, that it wasn't as groundbreaking as you might have hoped that it could be. Can you walk me through what did and didn't change in your career and in the industry after this win?
That's loaded.
Yeah.
But I do feel like in some ways first of all, it was a moment that I only know what happened because I watched the playback. It was one of these out of body experiences that I had. I had really no real belief that I would win. Back at that time, the Golden Globe was the precursor for the Oscar, and I didn't win the Golden Globe. So then I realized, well, I'm surely not going to win, but I'm going to go have a great time and be so proud that I'm there. So when my name got called, I really didn't have a speech. I didn't know what I was going to say, and sort of my subconscious took over, and I said what was on my spirit and what was on my heart. And because of that, thank you. But because of that, I do feel like that moment mattered, because so many people have come up to me over the years and they have told me how that moment shifted their thinking about what they could achieve or what they aspired to do or what they believed that they could do, that they were touched by that moment. So that is the value that I know is real. The heartbreak that I've spoken of, that I think I have, is because I really thought that night meant that very soon after that, other women of color, Black women, would stand beside me. And so now it's been 20 years and no one has. And so it makes every time when Oscar time comes around, I get very reflective and I think, well, maybe this year, maybe this year, maybe this year. And it's has become heartbreaking that no one else has stood there. And I think arguably there could have been other women who deserve to have been there that haven't been there. And it's just been heartbreaking. And I would have hoped that in 20 years, there would have been others that would be beside me.
We definitely, nobody wants to be the first and only for that long. Like nobody is trying to do that, right? You want to open the door and
trying to do that.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit also about what did and didn't change for you personally in your career as well too? So that was sort of about the industry and the award season, but for you yourself with the award, what did it open up and what did it not open up? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, awards are funny. I have learned, and I've talked to people who also have these statues, and it certainly brings, you know, cachet to your name. It brings credibility to your talent, and more people, I think, know who you are, and you know, so it's great. But at the same time, there's an expectation that sits down on you when you start gathering these awards, and sometimes it becomes an expectation that is hard for you to maneuver around, because the truth is we don't know what performances will garner awards. And I know I've never gone into any film or embraced any character thinking this is a role that's going to get me an award. I've never once thought that. So once you win an award, there's no formula to ensure that one, you win another award or that you get material worthy of another award. You know, it's not always within our control. So the unfair expectation is once you win one, that you should continue to do that, as if somehow you controlled the time, the first time you won it, because you really didn't. As an artist, all you do is you choose material that speaks to you for whatever reason. You show up and you do your very best, and then it's left to the movie gods. It's left to fate. It's left to timing. It's left to so many other variables, right? So I've always been one who, while I'm so grateful for that award and it changed my life in so many ways, I've tried really hard not to let that award define me. And I've tried really hard to stay as hungry as an actor as I always was. I've tried hard to still take risks and chances, because playing Letitia Musgrove was a risk. And many people said I was going to end my career. And then I got the highest, award of the industry. So I always wanted to keep those ideals intact that got me there. And it was to be brave and fearless and make my own choices and, choose characters and roles that spoke to me, even if others didn't agree, but that I had to live and die on the sword and live and die with my own decisions. And that's hard to do once you win the highest award of your industry.
So many more eyes are watching, right?
Yeah, and there's a lot more judgment and people questioning, why are you doing this? Why are you, so you don't have the freedom that you had before you start garnering awards. And that's kind of been my struggle with it, but I've tried really hard to stay true to myself and still try to play characters that interest me, that force me to grow, that are different. I never want to play the same kind of character twice and be typecast. And sometimes that's hard, and there hasn't always been material to support the choices that I want to make either, So after that award, I still had a feeling of, I'm still trying to forge a way out of no way. I can't say it got any easier after that award, because it really didn't.
Can we talk a little bit about what you just mentioned, which was the dearth of materials that sometimes exists, especially for a Black actress out there? You might be hungry to try so many different kinds of roles, but the availability of those roles is highly limited, particularly for women and particularly for Black women. Do you feel like there's been an opening up at all? Do you feel like that's changing, or do you feel like there's still sort of this scarcity mindset when it comes to the kinds of roles that Black women get considered for in the industry?
I do feel like it's changing. 20 years ago, we were in a much different place than we are today, for sure. I struggled to find roles that inspired me, that allowed me to showcase my talent in any way, or to play wide ranges of what I knew I could play. Right? Today, 20 years later, I do see that things have changed. I mean, look at the landscape, look at television, look, our best movies now, I think, are on TV, and it's full of color, and it's full of wonderful roles for women today that didn't exist 20 years ago. So I know that things are changing, and I'm really proud to be a part of, the evolution, because I'm still here and I've got a good bit of my career hopefully still ahead of me to be a part of this sort of new frontier. It's really exciting.
I'd love to talk about your part in this evolution, because not only are you part of it as an actor, but also as a producer and now as a director. You launched your own production company, 606 Film, in 2014 and have executive produced a multitude of films and television series. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to take creative control?
A desire to tell more stories, about not only women, but women of color. And realizing that if we don't do that for ourselves, chances are wasn't going to happen. And I'm so inspired now to see so many women of color, Black women, writing, producing, directing, telling our own stories, from our own guise, our own lens, daring to do so. And I'm also inspired by, those who aren't of color, who are supporting those of color and helping them realize these opportunities and supporting them along the way. So it's starting to feel better. It's starting to feel better.
Which brings us right now to Bruised. First of all, congratulations. Your premiere is happening tomorrow. This is a very exciting time. What was it about this film that made you want to invest so deeply in it, not only as an actor, but also as a director?
Well, when I first read this script over, 3-4 years ago now, it wasn't written for someone like me. It was written for a 25-year-old white Irish Catholic girl. Oh. So I knew as written could not be me. But what I loved about the story was it was classic fight film, which throughout history, people love to root for the underdog. They love a good fight film. I loved the fractured and brokenness of this character. And I love to see a film that's about redemption. I want to see, you know, the human spirit soar. I want to see someone rise above obstacles and still be standing at the end of the day. And I think that's what most people relate to, because we all struggle in that way at some point in our life. You know, we're all struggling to survive and get it right and show up for ourselves and for our family. So there were so many things about it that felt like what I instinctively knew. But my job now was to figure out how I could convince the producers who had the rights to this movie, how I could convince them that they should let me reimagine it for a middle-aged Black woman, and how I could play this fighter, and how I could tell this story. And that was a journey. And once they told me, after I sort of came up with my pitch and how I would rearrange it and how I would reshape the world and the characters and, you know, what city I would set it in and the neighborhood I would set it in, then when they agreed that, okay, we will rearrange the whole story and we'll let you star in it in this world that you've created, now we have to get a director. And so they charged me with going out and finding someone who would embrace this vision and who I thought could actually bring it to life. And so I diligently did that. And I spoke to accomplished directors, first-time directors, female, men, like the gamut. And after that process, I finally realized that while I respected all of them, some of them didn't understand it and didn't relate to the material, and some did relate, but they didn't see it quite the way I saw it. And I realized through the prodding of a very close friend of mine, Elaine Goldsmith-Thomas, one night I was talking to her and I just said, nobody understands what's in my head. And she said, well, why don't you do it? And I thought, me? I mean, I had been thinking about directing and I was going to write it. I was right in the process of writing a short and I wanted to, but I thought this is too big of a role. I can't first time direct and star in this big role. Like, this is crazy. And she said, sure you can. Of course you can. Of course you can. Nobody understands it like you do. No one loves it like you do. And after
gotta keep friends like that.
Yeah, friends like that. We need friends like that.
Yeah.
Say, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You know, reach higher. Believe in yourself. Of course you can. And I slept on it overnight, and I woke up in the morning thinking, yes, I can. I knew that I was going to work harder than I had ever worked in my entire life on a character. And the last thing I wanted was for all of that work to be for naught and to mistakenly fall in the hands of a visionary that didn't quite see it how I saw it. And what a disaster and what a letdown and what a failure that would feel like to me. And once I embraced that concept, I then had to go to the producers and I had to pitch myself as now the director. And, you know, to my surprise, they said yes. And there I was, off to the races.
And then here you are now.
I feel like, jumping back to what I said earlier when I first started my career, I can't say that this is what I set out to do at this time, to rewrite, star in, and direct my first film. But it's what was laid out in front of me. It's what presented itself to me. And what I've been able to do throughout my career, I think, is acknowledge the opportunity in the moment and go towards that fearlessly towards that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened here. While directing was swirling around in my mind and I had projects I was thinking of, this happened to be what got presented. And I happened to say yes to it. And I'm so, so glad that I did.
Well, that's an inspiring life lesson right there, because the opportunities are always presenting themselves, but we're not always open enough to receive them and to recognize them.
Or we talk ourselves out of them, or we let other people talk us out of these opportunities.
That friend is a good friend to keep around, because you need people like that who are like, no, it's right there. You can see it. Yeah.
Because sometimes we allow other people to put their fears on us and the things that they know that they can't do, they think are too hard for you. And sometimes we let them talk us out of our dreams and out of, you know, our own destiny. And I've always known I've always known the danger of that.
That's real. Well, let's take a look at a clip from the film so that everybody can see exactly what this vision is, or a little bit, a sneak peek of this vision that you've talked about. In this scene, we see Jackie walking with her son, Manny. 6-year-old Manny has just come back into Jackie's life after being estranged for most of his life, and their relationship is just beginning. Let's take a look. I feel like this is one of those films that's going to get me in my heart. It feels like it. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but that's the sense that I get watching that clip.
That little boy, I have to tell you, Danny Boy Jr. is a real find. He is one to watch for. He is an exceptional actor with an imagination that's so alive, and he's definitely one to.
He seemed like, I mean, he's not saying anything, but he's communicating so much already. So I can only imagine. Okay, so before we continue, I just want to let you guys know we're going to open it up to audience questions in just a moment. So if you have a question, make sure to type it into the chat box. But first, I just want to acknowledge the fact that today there was a massive Netflix deal announced for this film, for Bruised. Congratulations, Halle. This is humongous. Now we know that this film is going to be available for all of us to watch and to see very soon, which is so exciting. How are you feeling with this huge news?
You know, I'm blown away. I'm blown away, and I'm so grateful, to the festival, because when Cameron first saw the movie, he reached out right away and said how proud he was, and he invited us to show at the festival. And I think it was that buzz that got people interested, which then led us to Netflix. And, I can't stress enough the importance of festivals, and especially this festival. And I'm just very grateful that Cameron saw that. And our movie is a work in progress. We took a shot at, submitting it to the festival, but, we still have work to do on it. COVID sort of slowed our process down a lot. We're trying to figure out our way to finish it completely. With COVID happening, it's been a struggle. So, to get it bought, at this early stage is just, it's a thrill. It's a thrill. That's how.
No, that's amazing. That's huge. That's wonderful. Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I know we're running out of time, so I want to make sure our audience gets a chance to ask questions. So I'm going to open up the floor for the audience. My chat box has a little swirly line, so I can't see everything as clearly, but I think I can read it. So this is from Janice. Halle, love you. My question is, out of all of your films, which one left the greatest impression to you and why?
You know what, Janice, I get asked this question a lot. And the truth is, I look at all of my films like children. Every single one of them have left an impression. Even the films that seem like they've been failures, or they weren't, the films that people most talk about. I've learned something really valuable on every film set that I've walked on. I've learned something valuable from every character that I've brought to life. I've learned something from every director that I've worked with. So every experience to me has had great value. So to choose what was more valuable than the next, it's like saying, which kid do I love more, my daughter or my son? Like, not possible. I love them the same. And all of my films have brought me something really wonderful that was a part of my growth and my evolution as an artist, and most importantly, as a woman. So I can't answer that by just saying one. They've all been a part of my journey, and I think they've all been really necessary.
That's great. This next question is from Joshua. Hi, Halle. What was the transition like from acting to being a director for the first time? Were you nervous or confident? What were the toughest and easiest aspects of directing Bruised? What inspired you to tell this story in particular? So that's a lot of questions.
That's a lot of questions. We kind of answered one, the inspiration for the telling the story. But I'll tell you this, I was scared shitless. Of course. Anybody that tells you, any director will tell you that they're scared going in. And if they don't say that, they're not telling you the truth. Every director I have talked to that I've ever known tells you, yeah, you're, and I think having fear and having worry is healthy. If you're not having some sense of worry, then I don't think you really care I don't think you care about doing your best. And as an actor, I always feel that way. I always have, you know, a healthy amount of fear and wanting to do my best and hoping that I'm going to find it, you know. Sometimes it's elusive, so you just hope that you can tap into that creativity to put out what you're feeling inside. So yeah, you know, while I worked on movies for 30 years, I hadn't been behind the camera before. I didn't get to make all the decisions. I didn't have to choose all the actors. I didn't have to, you know, make all the decisions that a director makes, but I trusted that I would be able to do that, and I would fall back on my 30 years of being in the business and being on movie sets. But the easiest part was, I think, was working with actors, because being an actor, I know the language, I know what to say, I know how to communicate with actors. And being an actor, I've had some directors completely not know how to talk to actors, and they almost derail performances. And I've seen it happen, and it's happened to me many times. So I was very comfortable speaking with actors. I love actors. I love acting. And I loved being a part of watching them create their characters and help them where I could and help shape what they were doing. And it was the most exciting and exhilarating part for me, for sure.
I know you said that all of it was hard, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, did I read that you broke your ribs in the midst of filming and then kept going while you were dealing with that injury?
I did.
Like,
the director and me said, no, we got to keep going. We can't stop.
Like, for anybody in the audience who has not visited Halle's Instagram, you should, because you're literally like a real life action hero. You're doing things in your Instagram videos that I'm like, isn't that supposed to be done through special effects? I don't understand how you're physically, my lazy butt doesn't understand how you're physically doing that. And then to read that you did this, I'm like, so Halle is basically telling Tom Cruise his position is being taken as like the baddest action star of all. But anyway, okay, let me get back to the audience questions. So this is from Chelsea. Hey, Halle, what advice do you have for other young women of color and Black women who are interested in entering the industry but don't want to just be typecasted or a token?
I would say don't allow yourself to be typecast, and don't operate as a token. Say no. You have the right to say no. I would say create your own stories, write, direct, produce, create it for yourself. That's certainly what I did this time around with Bruised and a few other projects that I've produced. So create. That is the power. And imagine your own stories and don't be denied. You know, even if others don't believe in the strength of your story, you believe in the strength of your story, and be relentless in your pursuit. Don't take no. Be the hardest working person in the room. And I believe with that philosophy, you're going to get to the other side of any obstacle that's standing in your way.
Which is a really powerful kind of alternative strategy to the one that I feel like was preached a long time ago, which is like, just take all the silly gigs because you'll eventually get to the good stuff. Maybe that's not the smartest way necessarily, especially right now where there are so many mediums and ways to tell your story and so many ways to showcase your talent.
I think that used to be a way 20 years ago. I remember having to do so many things that I didn't really want to do because there was no other way. There weren't all these, you know, outlets now that we can go to. There weren't all these, you know, companies who are supporting women and women of color telling their stories. We didn't have the same opportunities. But today I would say, no, I don't believe that's the way to go. I would say stay clear in your vision. Be clear about the stories that you want to tell. Make them as authentic and as real as you possibly can from your own personal gaze on the situation, and fight for it. Fight, stand up and fight, and have the courage to fight. Be brave, you know, be brave. Don't be led by fear, but be led by strength and knowledge.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. Wonderful advice. This question is coming from Lisa Wickham from Trinidad and Tobago, who's watching. Shout out to TNT. How do you keep yourself grounded, focused, and motivated?
Well, I'm a big meditator. That's always been very helpful in my life. It's given me a chance to sort of check in with myself, and it's redirected my path at times when I have felt like I've been going on a path that I haven't wanted to be on. Meditation always brings me back to myself and helps me get clarity and helps me make some really tough decisions that I've had to make in my life. And in the last 12 years, it's been my children. Since I became a mom, there's nothing more grounding than having children and being a mother. And that's kept me very centered. It's kept me clear about what's important in life and what's not important in life. And they force me to be the best version of myself because I know they're always watching, and I'm always mindful of the me that I'm allowing them to see. So I've become a better person as a result.
That's a great answer. And I think it's one a lot of people can relate to for sure. Yeah. This is going to be our last question. It's from Cherry Davis. What did you learn from working with directors on past roles you brought behind? Sorry, what did you learn from working with directors on past roles that you brought behind the camera for Bruised?
Well, one lesson I learned, and I learned this from Warren Beatty when I did Bullworth with him. He also directed and starred in that movie. And I remember him talking about back then about, as a director, your job is to not micromanage, but it is to hire the people that you respect, that you believe hold your vision, and let them go do their jobs. You know, be a benevolent leader, trust in the people that you hire. And I also learned, and probably this is something that I've learned just from watching some of the best directors, that you really get more out of people by leading with kindness and grace and appreciating everyone's hard work. And by doing that, you create a group of people that will walk over hot coals for you and for your film. And I think that's the environment that I hope I created on Bruised, because I knew how important it was that everyone felt appreciated and valued and heard, and that they got to put their artistry forth, and that their creativity was also going to be a part of this project. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Halle, for taking the time to talk with me, to talk with all of us. Thank you. For those that don't know yet, Bruised is screening as a work in progress tomorrow evening at the Visa Skyline Drive-In at Seaview, as well as on the Bell Digital Cinema platform. So you can go see it, go if you can physically, or go watch it virtually. This is an amazing opportunity to access the festival in new ways and to see it in new ways. Have a great evening, everyone. Stay safe. Enjoy the rest of the festival wherever you are. And Halle, I hope you spend the rest of the evening or the day celebrating, because you deserve it. Congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.